What if I told you this? The very things you do to prove your love are the same things that slowly kill her respect for you. Most men don't see it until it's too late. She stops admiring you, she stops desiring you, and all that remains is distance. And that's why today I want to walk with you into the shadow 5 hidden patterns that quietly destroy your value in front of a woman. If you've ever felt invisible or wondered why she pulled away even when you gave her everything, stay with me until the end. You'll see not only why it happened, but how to reclaim yourself. And while you're here, subscribe and share your thoughts below because your voice matters in this conversation. It often begins quietly. You tell yourself, she's just busy, or it's only a small thing. But beneath that small compromise lies the first fracture of value. In neuroscience, there is a principle called habituation. The brain adapts to what is consistent and predictable. If you accept less and continue giving more, her nervous system quickly learns this rhythm. She doesn't need to invest because you'll remain anyway. And once the brain encodes a pattern of minimal effort with maximum reward, it rarely reverses itself without disruption. Jung might describe this as the lover archetype slipping into shadow, where devotion becomes dependency, where love is stripped of dignity. I think of David, a man who once sat across from me, shoulders heavy with exhaustion. 32 years old, successful in his work, but inside he was unraveling. His partner had stopped planning time with him, stopped responding with warmth, yet he stayed. "I don't want to pressure her," he whispered. "I want to show her unconditional love." What he called love was, in truth, fear. Fear of asking for more. Fear that if he spoke his needs, she would walk away. But here's the paradox. By never asking, he lost her anyway. Not in one dramatic ending, but in the slow fade of respect. Women, like men, respond to boundaries. When there is no edge, no line, no clear message of this is not enough, admiration dissolves. In Jungian language, the feminine tests the masculine not to destroy it, but to seek its strength. If she pushes and finds only collapse, she cannot trust what she sees. Let me invite you into a small reflection here. Think of one place in your own relationship, past or present, where you settled for less than what you needed. Write it down, even in a single word. This act of awareness is not about blame. It is about clarity. When you name the place where you abandoned yourself, you begin to reclaim it. The deeper layer of this pattern often lives in childhood. A boy who grew up believing love must be earned by compliance or silence or perfection becomes a man who confuses endurance with strength. He thinks that by absorbing neglect, he proves loyalty. But neglect endured is not loyalty, it is self-erasure. Modern psychology tells us that attachment wounds repeat until they are seen. Jung framed it simply. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So understand this. Accepting the bare minimum doesn't make you noble, it makes you invisible. A woman does not admire a man who trades his dignity for closeness. She admires the man who loves with a full heart, yet carries himself with self-respect, who can say, "I want more, and if you cannot offer it, I will walk." That man does not need to threaten. His very presence communicates value. And here is the first truth. When you stop accepting crumbs, you do not lose her. You discover who she truly is. Either she rises or she falls away. In both cases, you remain intact. But this is only the first wound. Beyond settling, there is another trap, when kindness becomes a mask for fear, and understanding slowly turns into allowing yourself to be walked upon. That is where we go next. There is a difference between compassion and surrender, and many men confuse the two. Compassion sees a partner's humanity, her struggles, her flaws. Surrender erases your own. When you let every broken promise slide, when you smile through every dismissal, You teach her not that you are patient, but that you are pliable, and pliability without limit becomes contempt. Neuroscience offers a clear picture here. Repeated forgiveness without consequence rewires both of your brains. In her, it creates a neural pathway where neglect meets no resistance, and so the behavior becomes reinforced. In you, it deepens the grooves of self-silencing, dulling the circuits in the prefrontal cortex, responsible for assertiveness and boundary making. The longer this continues, the harder it is to break free. Jung described this state as the lover archetype, collapsing into shadow, but it is also tangled with the wounded child. An inner boy still hoping that if he endures enough one day, love will finally become safe. You see it in the way some men apologize even when they've done nothing wrong, or laugh off insults to avoid conflict. On the surface, it looks like patience. Underneath it is terror, the terror of abandonment, of being unloved if they ever speak their truth. I remember working with a client named Marcus, 45, who carried this burden for decades. His wife would belittle him in front of friends, and he would smile. She ignored his needs, and he said nothing. "I just don't want to fight," he told me. But the fights still came only. Now they were one-sided, her voice filling the room, while his heart retreated further into silence. The more he yielded, the less she respected him. She did not leave because of the fights. She left because there was no man left to meet. This is the hidden cost of becoming a doormat. You think you are preserving love, but you are preserving only the shell of connection, hollowed out from the inside. Respect cannot coexist with unlimited excuses. In every healthy bond, there must be friction, resistance, consequence. Without it, what you call love is only avoidance wearing the mask of loyalty. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Women know when you are letting them get away with what they should not. They may not say it aloud, but unconsciously they feel the imbalance. Admiration thrives where standards are alive. When you dissolve those standards in the acid of endless forgiveness, admiration evaporates. She does not feel safe with a man who cannot say no. Self-respect does not mean harshness. It means you are anchored enough to say, "This behavior is not acceptable." It means your words carry weight because they are bound to action. A boundary without consequence is not a boundary, it is a wish. And wishes do not command respect. To stop being a doormat is not to stop being kind. It is to stop letting kindness be weaponized against you. It is the courage to say, "I can love you," and still walk away if this continues. That paradox is where strength is born. The journey doesn't end with refusing to be trampled. There is another subtle form of losing yourself when you hand over your entire identity, abandoning your passions and your soul until she becomes the only orbit you live in. That is where we turn next. There is a kind of love that feels intoxicating at first when she becomes your center, your sun, your gravity. You cancel nights with friends, you let hobbies collect dust, you trade ambition for her attention. At first, it feels like devotion. Over time, it becomes disappearance, and nothing erodes value faster than a man who forgets himself in the orbit of a woman. Modern psychology names this enmeshment. When two identities collapse into one, boundaries dissolve and individuality is lost. Neuroscience shows us that the dopamine rush of new love can mimic addiction. Circuits in the reward system fire as if she were a drug, leaving you craving her presence while neglecting the deeper structures of your own identity. In Jungian terms, this is anima possession, the feminine within you, overwhelms the masculine, and you no longer stand in your own center. Instead of being a man, she can meet as an equal. You become a reflection of her moods, her desires, her choices. I once spoke with Jonathan, a 30-year-old teacher. He had stopped painting, stopped running marathons, even stopped visiting his family because she needed me. His days were scheduled around her texts, his emotions tethered to her approval. At first, she basked in the attention, but soon her admiration waned. He doesn't feel like his own person anymore, she confessed. It's like he lives through me, not with me. What Jonathan thought was love had quietly drained his strength. What she once admired the man with passions, goals, laughter of his own was gone. This loss is not only relational, but existential. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming fully yourself, was the task of every human being. When you give up your path for another's, you betray that task. You hand away the very thing that makes you magnetic, your unique essence, your purpose, your vitality. Without it, attraction fades not because she is ungrateful, but because there is nothing left to desire. Desire lives in polarity, and polarity needs two poles. Ask yourself, what have you set aside in the name of love? Which pieces of you have been left behind waiting in the shadows, neglected because you thought devotion meant erasure? Write them down. Name them. Each forgotten part of you is a call to return. When you reclaim your life outside of her, you do not weaken the bond, you strengthen it because you remind her why she was drawn to you in the first place. And if any of this feels familiar, I invite you to pause and share one thing you've given up in the name of love down in the comments. You might be surprised how many men carry the same story, and sometimes naming it aloud is the first step to taking it back. A man rooted in his own life carries an energy that is unmistakable. He does not need her to fill his emptiness. He invites her to walk beside his fullness. That is the difference between partnership and dependence. One is alive, the other suffocates. And here's the truth. When you lose yourself, she eventually loses you too, not because she wants to, but because she cannot follow where you no longer exist. To love her well, you must first remember yourself. But even when you do remember, there is another silent poison, the energy of desperation. It leaks into your voice, your eyes, your very presence. And once it is felt, it changes everything. That is what we will uncover next. Desperation is not something you declare out loud. It is something that seeps through your pores, invisible yet undeniable. She sees it in your eyes when you check your phone every 5 minutes. She hears it in your voice when every question hides a plea. Will you still choose me? Attraction doesn't die because you love too much. It dies because your love is entangled with fear. Neuroscience explains it this way when the brain perceives scarcity. Dopamine spikes, making the object of your desire feel even more critical to survival. You begin to act as though her attention is oxygen, and without it, you cannot breathe. But the paradox of the human nervous system is this: the more desperately you cling, the less safe the other person feels. Pressure signals danger, and danger triggers distance. What you think is proof of love is received as evidence of instability. Jung would call this the shadow of the lover archetype, a man possessed not by love, but by the fear of its withdrawal. Desperation reveals not devotion, but dependency. And dependency corrodes respect because it whispers to her unconscious, "This man has no center apart from me." Women, like men, are drawn to strength, and strength is never found in grasping. Consider Daniel 36, who once described to me the agony of waiting hours for his partner's replies. He admitted to rereading old messages just to calm his anxiety to reshaping his schedule around her whims. "I don't want to lose her," he said, but in that statement lived the truth. He had already lost himself, and because of that, he began to lose her too. She grew distant, not because she wanted another man, but because she could no longer feel the grounded presence she once admired. The tragedy of desperation is that it turns love into a bargain. You offer more, you beg silently for reassurance, and you believe that if you give enough, she will not leave. But biology and psychology align here. Scarcity breeds devaluation. When something feels too easily available, it loses its weight. What is fought for is cherished. What is handed over without question is often ignored. Let me ask you this as a micro-action for reflection. When was the last time you caught yourself clinging instead of standing? When did you text, not out of joy, but out of fear. Becoming aware of those moments is not weakness. It is the beginning of reclaiming your posture. The cure for desperation is not arrogance or indifference. It is self-respect. A man who knows he can breathe without her, who chooses her not out of need, but out of strength, carries an energy that is magnetic. His presence says, I value you, but I do not vanish without you. That balance between love and freedom is the soil where attraction grows. And so remember this, confidence is quiet. Desperation is loud. A man who does not beg to be chosen often is. A man who grasps only teaches her to let go. Yet even deeper than desperation lies the final fracture of value, the absence of real boundaries. When your words carry no consequence, when your limits dissolve in the name of keeping her respect slips through your fingers. That is where we go next. A man without boundaries is like a fortress with its gates wide open. Magnificent at first sight, but defenseless when tested. Many men confuse unconditional love with unconditional tolerance. They think that by absorbing betrayal, laughing off disrespect, or excusing neglect, they are proving devotion. But devotion without edge is not love. It is erasure. Neuroscience helps us see why this erasure is so costly. Our brains are wired for patterns. When a behavior meets no consequence, the nervous system encodes it as safe and repeatable. If she cancels on you, mocks you, ignores your needs, and you stay her brain. Quietly registers. This carries no cost. From that point forward, repetition is not only possible, it is likely. Behavior becomes habit. Habit becomes norm, and the norm becomes the prison in which you live. Jung spoke to this dynamic with piercing clarity. People treat you not as you are, but as what you allow. A man who enforces no boundaries unconsciously reveals that he fears abandonment more than he honors himself. He may say, I have standards, but the lack of consequence empties those words of meaning. And once words carry no weight, the self begins to dissolve. The feminine tests the masculine not to destroy it, but to seek its strength. When her testing meets only collapse, respect erodes, and without respect, attraction decays. Michael, a 40-year-old client of mine, embodied this cycle. His wife often dismissed his feelings, cutting him off mid-sentence or making jokes at his expense. He would smile, change the subject, and swallow the sting. I don't want to make things worse, he told me. I just want peace, Bem. But what he thought was peace was avoidance, and avoidance became a silent permission slip. Over time, she grew not calmer, but colder. You never make me feel where you stand, she finally said. And with that, she walked away. She did not leave because he was unkind. She left because she could not trust a man who refused to stand at all. Boundaries are not about punishment. They are about clarity. They are the frame that gives love, shape the guardrails that keep intimacy from sliding into chaos. Without them, love becomes indulgence, a constant giving way, a bending until you break. With them, love becomes trust. When you calmly enforce your lines, you are saying, I will not abandon myself to keep you. And paradoxically, that is what makes her feel safe. A woman does not want a man who explodes in anger. She wants a man whose yes means yes, and whose no means no. Ask yourself, what line have you drawn but never lived? Perhaps you told yourself you would never tolerate dishonesty, yet you stayed. Perhaps you promised you would not accept neglect, yet you endured. Write it down. See it clearly. Because until you live your boundaries, you will remain invisible not only to her, but to yourself. The truth is this: a man who enforces nothing invites repetition. A man who enforces calmly, consistently, invites respect. Boundaries do not diminish love. They protect it. They do not sever connection. They allow it to be real. And once you live from this place, you will discover that consequence is not cruelty. It is integrity. And integrity is the ground where love can finally stand. Every wound we've walked through, accepting the bare minimum, becoming a doormat, losing yourself, radiating desperation, and abandoning boundaries has pointed toward one core truth. Value is not something a woman assigns to you. It is something you either embody or betray. When you give away your standards, your identity, your center, you don't lose her first, you lose yourself. And that is where the unraveling begins. Neuroscience shows us that the brain rewires with every choice. Each time you accept less than you deserve, each time you stay silent when your soul screams no, you strengthen neural pathways of submission and self-erasure. But the opposite is also true. The moment you begin to act differently, even in the smallest ways, you carve new grooves of strength. The more you practice self-respect, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, respect is no longer an effort, but a state of being. Jung would call this individuation the sacred process of becoming whole. He taught that the shadows we deny will rule us, but the shadows we face will free us. Each of the 5 fractures we've named is not a curse. It is a mirror. When you see that you've been accepting crumbs, excusing disrespect, or clinging from fear, you are not damned. You are invited. Invited into the work of becoming conscious. Invited into the task of walking upright, no longer enslaved to old wounds or unconscious patterns. Let me share this. I have seen men emerge from the darkest places of self-abandonment and rise into extraordinary strength. One man who once begged for love now walks with calm presence, drawing admiration without asking. Another who once gave up his passions has rebuilt his life's work, and his partner adores him for the man he is not, for the man he surrendered. Healing is not abstract. It is practical. It begins with one refusal: I will not betray myself again. And here is the paradox you must embrace. The moment you stop chasing value from her is the moment she begins to feel your value. The masculine that is rooted in self-respect does not need to be loud. It is quiet, steady, magnetic. A woman cannot help but respond to the man who knows his worth because he does not make her the source of it. His worth flows from within, anchored, unshakable. So I leave you with this invitation. Look at the 5 places where men lose their value. Choose one to change this week. Just one. Practice it like a muscle. Say no when you mean no. Speak your truth calmly. Pick up one forgotten passion and make it alive again. The transformation does not happen in a single leap. It happens in steady steps, practiced in daily life until you become the man you were meant to be. And now I want to thank you for walking this journey with me. If these words stirred something in you, take a moment to share your reflections in the comments. Which of the 5 patterns resonated most deeply with you? Your voice might be the encouragement another man needs tonight. And if you found value here, consider subscribing. This space exists for men like you, men who are willing to face their shadows and rise stronger. Remember this: you are not too late and you are not broken. The right woman does not define your worth. She responds to it. And the man who reclaims himself will always find that respect follows like a shadow that never leaves. Thank you for being here. Until next time, take care of your heart, your mind, and your soul.